Okay, so we were talking about fitness influencer, bodybuilders, people who are in competitions typically have seasons that they're training for things. You will run across someone who periodically who will say something like team no days off. And as this one fitness influencer that I really like said, team whatever, team no days off or team no rest or whatever, it's not really a team. There's no management structure, there's no pay scale. No one actually participates in that. It's just you saying some shit.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that, right? It's like we all band together, but you're not. It's just you deciding on the same thing somebody else decided.
Well, the thought that comes to my mind is, even the fastest of race cars, right? They got to pull over and get refueled,
Get the tires changed and all that.
put some
right?
new tires on,
Yeah.
get some Gatorade or whatever it is. So our bodies, in a lot of ways. I mean, I know we're not machines, but our bodies are no different, right? Energy has to be conserved. So if we are expelling energy, there has to be energy put in, and all that kind of jazz. So you're not going to be able to expel energy nonstop at peak efficiencies or at peak outputs without eventually coming crashing down for recovery.
If you just want to be a fit adult, or you want to be a fitness person, or you want to be a competition driven person that has some kind of athleticism at its core. But whether or not you're in one of those categories that you're in, whether or not you're going to take the approach of being a person who has to train in terms of intensity for seasonality. I got a show coming up in 8 months. I've got a competition coming up in 8 months. You still have to observe some sort of devotion to those rest stages. Fitness, no matter what your level, achievement, no matter what your level, doesn't happen while you're working out. It happens while you're not. You have to incorporate that rest.
Like no matter what competition it is, whether it's a sports ball competition, if it's a fisticuffs competition, or again, like we're talking physique, bodybuilding, weightlifting competitions, right? Where you're training for a peaking moment, so to speak, a PEAK, your topping out moment. It's one of those things, right? We can touch the ceiling for a brief moment, and then we're going to fall back down to earth once after. And then you hope for the next time that you jump, you get a little bit further up. But again, the same point to your point, Paul, is again, there's a season built into this to where, you want to, whether it's a sports ball competition, right? You typically are wanting your team to be really humming and driving towards the playoffs and towards the end of the seasons, going for the championship. Again, for fitness competitors or for like physique competitors, right? You're gonna have a big show that's important to you, whether it's if this is to get your pro card, or if you already got your pro card, you're working the circuit, so to speak. There's going to be certain echelons of competitions that you want to get into, and that's where you really want to show. The other ones are just kind of practice runs. You want to look good, sure, but there's that one pinnacle. There's that one that you got highlighted on the calendar and start or whatever, that's the one you want to get your absolute best showing. But you'll never be able to walk around that way every day of your life. Usain Bolt, the fastest man on earth, yeah, I'm sure any day of the week he can drop into a sprint and beat us. But to be a world record sprint time, he has to build his strength up into that, build his body up into that.
The other aspect of that is how much intensity you put into the season. The science overwhelmingly says that for optimal performance gains, whether it's aesthetic or some kind of endurance or conditioning test, your level of achievement isn't going to be significantly benefited. Working out like 6 days a week, is that going to be more beneficial than working out more intensely for 5 days a week, right? And then taking your adequate rest. And that's what I'm getting at, right? Is the adequate rest. The other thing that we should talk about is that you have to understand that there is a cost analysis of each one of these things. We bridged on it a little bit, right? Or we talked on it a little bit whenever we were saying that if you have this much intensity during each visit to your training grounds, you will achieve for that level of intensity plus diet plus rest and recovery is going to yield you. You really won't get much further than what you're putting into it. And that kind of goes without saying, sure. But if you are training at a moderate level of intensity for 5 days a week, you will not get to the same place as if you're training at a heavier level of intensity for 5 days a week. Now, all that being said is that just like your devotion to maybe health, wellness, and vitality, longevity, costs you your ability to be in some kind of top tier expression of whatever. I can run the fastest, I can lift the heaviest, I can cycle the furthest. While it may cost you that, being able to do those things in turn doesn't go without cost as well. The whole title of this episode is choosing imbalance, right? And that doesn't have to just mean like, oh, well, my devotion to my diet, exercise, and rest and recovery takes priority over all else. It can also mean that, for instance, if you have a specific goal of, like, let's just say deadlifting, just picking that one, please, anybody that's devoted to deadlifting, I'm not shitting on your sport at all. I'm just using it as an example that a lot of people can refer to and have either seen or performed. That's it.
The most dangerous lift in the world.
Right. Yeah. Like, not coming after it at all. So deadlifting, for example, you train and train and train, and you train hard to go into some kind of deadlifting competition. Well, that carries with it specific types of muscular devotions, developing specific types of muscular strength. And you necessarily have to spend more time on that to be able to compete at a level where other people who are spending a lot of time on that are going to be challenged by your effort, people who are in your weight class or whatever else. The thing that we're getting at here is that carries with it a muscular balance cost. You train all this stuff on the posterior portion of your expressible strength, and it doesn't leave as much time for you to train a whole bunch of stuff on the anterior portion of your expressible strength.
You're talking about deadlifts, and again, not crapping on deadlift, but a common thing I feel that I see with deadlifting specifically that even I think lends itself even more to the chosen imbalance or an unknown imbalance is the common tendency to skip the negative.
Okay, that's a great thing to talk about. Please go ahead.
And so, you must always think about like moving the weight from point A to point B, so to speak, or up and down. But it's like, again, how do we do it? And like the cue I always tease people with is don't let gravity take the fun away. And so when we focus on the deadlift, and especially a competitor, especially from a competition standpoint, the whole game of it is to get to lockout, right? To get from the weight down on the floor to where your hips are over your knees and your knees are over your ankles and your shoulders are somewhere above the bar.
And shoulders are pushed back.
Yeah. Right. And that's it. And so that's what competitors will train predominantly, which is, you're going to generate a lot of power, you're going to generate a lot of strength and just raw output. However, the trip back down to the ground, and this is where you see all the memes about, or the videos nowadays about, sir, please stop dropping the bar.
Yeah.
And things of that nature. Please stop slamming the bar. Or you get the old timer coming up from behind and says, back in my day, we used to always just say, we didn't have to make all this noise, sonny.
Yeah.
In that regard,
get off my lawn and I'm keeping this ball. Go ahead. Yeah.
Shake my fist. There is some truth to it, in that if we're skipping the control aspect of that, right? If we're not really getting the eccentric setting that weight down, we're missing a lot of muscle training opportunities. And again, we're going to be stacking the deck more towards a muscular imbalance of, again, very heavy like quad, maybe dependency, not as much a hamstring activation as you would want to get into, or as much strengthening and connection to that, because we're just allowing the weight to come crashing down versus, again, that slow eccentric loading into the hamstrings, loading into the glutes to get it back down to the floor.
A thought occurs to me just now. The science also overwhelmingly says that, or expressing strength in a muscle in a lengthened position is what's truly going to inspire growth and the actual capability to express further strength.
So, not to get too far in the mucky muck, right? But that's where we get a lot of the tribalism, so to speak, of like team full ROM, full range of motion versus right. And the whole spirit of like full range of motion is to create the biggest stretch in a muscle that you can generate, and then create tension through that stretch to create the movement, right? And so within that spirit, right, that's not terrible. There's some caveats that we discuss in a former episodes about effective ranges versus full ranges and such.
Right.
We won't bore you today.
Well, the thought that occurs to me is, with that being pretty conclusively understood, wouldn't it be interesting if competitions shifted instead of standing upright in a deadlift, it was how long
slowly can they set it down on the floor?
Yeah, like how slowly can you pause for right before you set it down?
Yeah, right? I can just see like we got little scales.
Yeah, little pressure sensitive.
From the time it hits to the time it hits full weight, they time that to see who can go the slowest.
Right. Who can set that down?
What happens? People just come crashing down to that point, and then they'll slam the brakes on.
Yeah.
And then they start playing the game.
Yeah, or like in bench pressing competitions, like holding the bar near your chest for as long as possible before you send it back up. Like, wouldn't that be interesting?
Ooh, no, even better. You have to do like a 30-second, just sit there at the bottom, or a 60-second, hold there at the bottom. Then you can do your rep.
So the deal is that with these devotions to expressing strength in specific ways that are demanded by whatever competition. Unless it's like a physique or a bodybuilding competition. But like if it's something that has a repetitive action, like running or cycling or swimming or some kind of lifting competition, whether it's like boxing or MMA or whatever, these things that have repetitively expressed strength. What is this?
Computer mice.
Oh, yeah. Okay, there you go. Or typing on a keyboard. A way more relatable thing might be typing on a keyboard or clicking endlessly with your mouse.
Working on a hard project or an assignment that you're trying to cram through real quick that has a deadline or something of that nature, and will tense up and put a lot more pressure into tables or into the whole. I had one client, he used to tell me he had to have to break because he'd be squeezing his mouse so hard.
Well, let's take all this down into something where it is relatable for a lot of people. Now, this is more noticeable if you're dehydrated slightly. And in fact, one of the ways that you'll know whether or not you're slightly dehydrated. Let's say you're carrying something heavy that requires you to get a good grip on it. Not like a backpack or something, right? Like you're carrying it in both of your hands, assuming those are available. But the closer your hands have to be to like form into fists, when you set that object down, the longer that you've been carrying it, the more difficult it is for you to open your hand up, right? Well, picture that times whatever amount all over your body with whatever it is that you're training for. And it's kind of the same thing, right? You have these devotions to express strength in ways that the competition demands, which leaves muscles that do the exact opposite of that, which you need for every other thing in your fucking life,
right?
That get less attended. So it's important to understand that that's one of those things that you are willingly walking toward. Interestingly, physique and bodybuilding competitions are less likely to have that happen because one of the metrics that those competitions are judged on is balance for these expressed muscle groups all over the body. You walk out with poor posture and you're automatically gone, or you have a huge chest and minuscule posterior expression and you're not going to place well. But then when you look at that, there are these things about, well, in order to be the biggest or most defined or whatever else, there are these supplements that I have to take, or this gear that I have to run. And the term gear is one of those things that gets one of those terms that gets applied to performance enhancing
What stack
supplements
you
or
running,
drugs.
bro?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. So those things are sort of a built-in necessity for those kinds of competitions.
And even those individuals have to cycle.
Yeah, and even those individuals have to cycle, right? They do. Now, when you go into those kinds of competitions, when you walk into a bodybuilding or a physique competition and you're like, "Well, I'm training balance all over the place." Well, okay, yeah, but you're choosing the imbalance of the difficulty of whatever you are ingesting or injecting.
Into a natural competitor, right?
Huh?
Right. We've talked about this in other podcasts as well in this one, but to cut down position,
Mm-hmm.
right? Again, that is a hard journey on the body, and if we're doing it, depending on how many times one does it throughout the year, even if they ballooned up to 20% body fat, if we're talking a male, and then he's cutting himself down to that 3-4% for a competition in a show, that's a big swing, not just in mass potentially, but just
Mm-hmm.
like in lifestyles. And so we have this kind of, again, this throttling effect.
Yeah.
And anytime we go kind of that way, the body adapts, yes, but
Sure.
it adapts because it's under stress and it doesn't want to be under stress. And so it's trying to get out of stress, and we just go from from the frying pan to the fire and back and forth, and we're really not creating positive adaptation, I don't feel.
Right. So some kind of relatability for that, right? Throwing your body out of a rhythm that it is used to or willing to perform under most optimally. When you travel, everybody has something they're affected by when they're travel, right? Whether or not it's like how well you can sleep or the ease of which you can go to the red. When I travel, I just can't pee for hours or whatever it is. I know people who have said all these things. They're either their sleep is affected, their capability to for restroom visits is affected. Take from that what you will. Their diet, their appetite is affected. If you're traveling all day long, you don't have access to the same kind of diet and cuisine that you're used to having, and unless you are super devoted with it and are going to be bringing your own food and meal prepping the whole day, then you are subject to whatever's available around you while you're traveling, and that has an effect, and we all have felt it. If you travel at all, even if it's just spending all day in the car, road trip food has a term for a reason.
Yeah, you go back at one of the hospitals she used to work at, they used to call it their daily rations. Why they did this, I don't know. I mean, I get why, but they'd hand out like candy and Ritz crackers and various snacks, travel food, if you will, as like they always said, it was to keep the morale up.
Yeah,
it was their daily rations. But whenever we would be going on a trip that would require us to go flying, she could start hoarding them.
Yeah, but there you go. Your rhythms in whatever way get interrupted. You have a certain reaction to that. You, whoever you are watching or listening, whoever you are speaking right now, we all have reactions to that. And the same goes for interrupting your body's rhythms or cycles or whatever else with stuff that will allow you to perform more or better or longer or whatever. And even then, like John said earlier, you have to cycle on that. So just remember, you are choosing a set of problems, right? Like you're choosing a set of problems along with your goals. You're choosing a collection of things that you won't be able to go toward or have normally for a bit as part of a goal. Number one, there's just not enough scientific evidence. Number two, ultimately, none of us are getting out of this alive, and you should enjoy whatever it is that you want to do, right? As long as it doesn't bring harm to someone else. Sure, go ahead. Train for that competition. Do it, right? Like I said, none of us are getting out of this alive. So at the end of it, there's not enough scientific evidence that has been collected or studied to say that hands down, let's say that I want to do a powerlifting competition once in my life. So you train like hell for that, right? And you accept all the imbalances that go along with that. And once you get out of that, you have to work toward training out of those imbalances. You want to go for some kind of bodybuilding or physique competition, the same thing is true, right? If you have the best trainer in the world, and they're helping you through that, and you suffer no injury whatsoever, there's
Mhm.
still the gear that you have to cycle onto or off of, and the stress that you put your body under that then you're going to have to cycle off of. There's just not enough evidence to suggest that those things, when done in whatever the amount or frequency of those things is, that will be detrimental to your long-term health. There's
I mean, the
just
one
not.
caveat I would say is the gear.
Well, no, what I'm saying is, like, but let's just say that you want to do that
If you
once,
did it
right?
natural once, probably yeah, might be more
Yeah,
apart.
right. But there's just not enough evidence to say that here are the hardcore metrics. This is where this sits in safe levels, and you'll have no
Right.
discernible impact for the rest of your life. There's just not enough evidence gathered, and the evidence that is gathered has a lot of stuff that's open to interpretation at the end of it, right? About what's going to be, and I'm only talking here about what's long-term detrimental. So, I mean, there's little argument that loading up really heavily on gear and cycling through PEDs is going to be good for you. There's little doubt that that's,
Right.
you know, like what the effects of that are. If anyone's curious, go look up a gentleman named Rich Piana, and then you'll understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an example of someone who really took it really far.
Mhm.
And
Still does.
and what's that? No, he doesn't do much of anything
still-
anymore.
Oh yeah.
Oh
He
yeah.
passed away.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I didn't realize
Yeah.
that. I don't keep up. I
Yeah.
don't really keep up with celebrities too much.
Yeah, no. Well, he was a celebrity in the bodybuilding world.
Mhm.
He was very public about his PED use. He was very, very open about it. And ultimately, you know, there is little doubt about what led to his early death. And pointing to the science, there's little doubt what overdoing it on those things will do to
Yeah.
a person.
Absolutely.
From just a muscularity standpoint or an injury standpoint, there's little doubt what overtraining will do to you. But there is a huge area in between doing nothing and overloading where the effects are just directly dependent upon your level of intensity, both of training and how much of that stuff you're using. And no one's trying to scare anybody. That's not to say that you shouldn't endeavor into whatever's going to make you happy. But remember, the more hardcore you choose to go into a specific area, the more hardcore your choices have to be to stay in it and stay relevant in it. And as a result of that, the more hardcore the effects are going to be. So, doing something as safely as you can and as sustainably as you can requires that you align your resources with your goals. Now, these are resources of time, of equipment, or circumstance with regard to whatever it is that you're training for. So, if you want to train to go into a powerlifting competition, you're probably going to need some kind of a facility that allows you to move around a bunch of heavy weight. Now, could you go to like some kind of a steel mill and do a bunch of makeshift stuff? Sure, right? Maybe. I mean, there are those.
You're probably not going to go to Planet Fitness. You're going to need a barbell. You're going to need some bumper weights, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
you're not going to be able to go to a Planet Fitness. You know, the YMCA you can probably get away with, but it'll be not maybe the culture or the spacing that you're expecting or would like to have. But
you just said something that was really important to pay attention to: the culture of what it is that you're trying to achieve. The less you're around like-minded or similarly goal-oriented people, the more it's going to require your own sense of inner motivation. And the more isolated you are, the harder that is to come by, right?
The gym I work out at, you know, it's more of I feel like a bodybuilding competitor gym from the equipments and some of the banners and stuff they got around. But in the back corner, they got like this little dingy room that's like the powerlifting room.
Yeah.
And you got all the powerlifting bros and chicks in there with their chucks on and chalk flying everywhere through the air.
Chucks on, yeah.
Powerlifting belts hanging everywhere.
Yeah. And then in that one corner in whatever room is that dressing room style mirror setup, probably.
Oh no, this place actually has an entire room set up for a posing room. Again, that's that gym. Just as any business, they cater to a particular audience or a particular clientele, and that's that same thing. If you're powerlifting, you're going to need to be in a powerlifting type gym, or you know, go to the steel mill.
Just like we were saying, okay, so just like we were saying, there's plenty of available scientific data for heavy usage. Not as much that can be conclusive is what we were trying to say earlier. Not as much it could be conclusive about I'm going to try this out because I want to have done this once in my life.
Right.
Now, when you are aligning your resources with your goals, and like we were saying, culture is a big part of it. The information that you're using to achieve that stuff is a huge part of it. Because if you're getting shit advice, or you're having, if you're on some kind of if somebody's telling
trash output,
that's right. So if somebody's telling you that eating loads of carbs and fats and then resting 7 days a week is the best way for you to run a sub 4 minute mile or something, that's just not true, right? Like those, right. It's just not true.
Got a carb load.
What?
Got a carb load.
That's right. Got a carb load, then go to bed, and then wake up and stay sedate. You have to align the information that you're getting, the diet that you are observing, the training that you're partaking in, and the overall lifestyle that you are committing to with regard to whatever it is that this goal is. If it's health and wellness and longevity versus a specific type of athletic look or conditioning kind of achievement, not competition, or if it's a straight up competition. But no matter what the necessary ratios are, two things stand out. Does what you're doing match with what you want? And we could go into that. I feel like we already have kind of beat that to death today, or over the course of this episode. But it must be said. You really have to take that into account. Does what you're doing match with what you want? Go ahead.
I was gonna say, it reminds me of the best form of cardio, right? What's the best form?
The kind that you're going to do.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Like, again, we can bust out studies and we can get all the EMGs and VO2 max crap set up on you. And we can definitely put a metric and find which one has, the most calorie burn, which I believe is probably jogging or running. But, you can find which one's probably better for the joints and, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, if you don't like it, you don't care for it, it's boring to you, right? Then it doesn't matter. It's the worst at that point.
Right. Yeah. And understand
no matter all the benefits.
Right. Now, does what you're doing match with what you want? There must be stated as a part of that what you want might require more than what you're doing and more than you're willing to do. That's a big deal. Yeah. John and I were talking off mic, and the example that came to mind for me was this movie that I saw with Josh Hartnett. It was a vampire movie. And the interesting thing about this vampire movie was that I can't remember where exactly, like what city it was in, but basically it was this remote kind of Alaskan type of environment where basically the sun was set or it was night for like 6 months out of the year, right? Interestingly, in any vampire movie, I always wondered why they all just didn't live there, like
it's cold.
What's that?
It's cold and there's not much food.
Well, yeah, sure. Anyway, the movie took place in this sort of town.
She's a nice girl.
Right. I don't remember a whole lot about it, but what stands out more than the movie is immediately following was the behind the scenes stuff about making the movie. And I remember all of whom were going to be kind of background vampires and illustrate like the swarms, like running down the street while people are trying to run and hide and keep from being eaten. The casting director was encouraging them to act in this certain way that this vision that movie had in mind for how its vampires behaved. You had these people walking along and raising their hands like they were starring in somebody's nightmare, like some kind of overwrought, like really overexpressed large steps and hands above their heads, and they were shrieking and all this. And it was just a bunch of people in this room doing this all around each other. Mm-hmm. Now, many of us wanted to, entertain notions of being some kind of famous movie star when we were young, or like maybe some of us still do. But that's one of those things that if you're not willing to do that kind of thing, you're not making it into that movie.
Yeah.
And all of the people that were in that room knew it. And so they were all trying to one up each other on the expressions for this thing, right? They were all just, every time someone would do something that was over the top, the other person would just try and match that and take it up just a little more. That's kind of this meta example for all of it, right? Like if you're in any kind of a competition, that's the same energy. And if you're not doing that, there's someone who you're going to be competing with who is doing that, who is willing to.
Well, that's the old adage about like sports ball athletes, right? Everybody's willing to play the game, right? Who's willing to practice? And, you know, those who are willing to practice, right? They've made it to a certain level. Well, you know, everybody's doing the same thing that you've already done. So how are you going to be different? Like, what are you going to do that they're not doing to take the game? That, you know, that's where you get the people like the Kobe's or the Michael Jordans or, you know, who are the Tom Brady's, all the people that kind of transcend the game in some way. If you studied them, they did something. Yes, they are immensely talented, but you're amongst peers of all talents. It's what were they doing outside of the game, outside of practices to set themselves apart that other players were not doing.
The other way to say that is when you step onto the stage or when you step onto the performance evaluation of whatever it is, were you better than everyone else? Or was everyone just shittier than you? Now, when you get to a certain level of competition, you look at the Olympia, the people that are on that stage competing, they didn't look shittier than everybody else, right? Those people were already prime examples of training and devotion and protocols and diet and whatever supplementation they were running and all that, all these carefully balanced things. And then someone else just did that a little bit better.
Yep.
Right. Or but not a whole lot better, just a little bit better.
Me and my wife like Happy TV, so we watch Great British Baking Show.
Okay. Yeah.
And in the beginning of the series of the season, right? Always it's, you know, you got everybody there, and so you got the best, the one whoever's going to wins there, and then the person who gets kicked off first is there. And so the skill is, you know, expand that, you know, and as it progresses, you hear the judges talking more about it changes from what people are doing right and the things that they're amazed by people doing to, oh, wow, the disappointment if you did this wrong. And, oh, this is that one thing that held you back. And if you had just done that one little piece right, you'd have been to that next level kind of a thing. And I feel that's a little bit of some of these competitions. Once we get to this certain echelon, it's no longer about, are you doing the right things right? Like, that's just expected. It's
right. That's expected.
Yeah. It's the judges are looking to where are your flaws versus being amazed by what you've highlighted almost.
So it's important to keep that in mind. The second thing to keep in mind with all of that is that no matter what your ability, even if it doesn't ultimately equal your goal, if you are mindfully training for that thing, at the very least, you can still be better at that, right? On your way to be a fitness or figure competitor or someone who is trying to demonstrate intensity in their capability to swim or bike or run or lift, even if your best effort didn't equal the best example, you still got better at that. And I know that, oh, that's stupid, that sucks, shut your fucking mouth, you know, whatever, fuck you, you know. But the hard, simple fact of it is that's true, you know. Not all of us can have an operatic singing voice, but with training, we can get better at singing.
Right.
You know, so at the very least, really, it is true. I mean, it gets said to you when you're a child. Hopefully, if you didn't have shitty people around you, your best still counts for something, right? Yeah. And you should really celebrate that. There's no reason to lament if you truly brought your best to it. Now, those two things into consideration and all of this shit being said, it cannot be overemphasized that we are saying all of this with the assumption of some good information and some steady guidance, right? A well-researched program as least impact as possible to whatever it is, whatever your protocols are, diet and exercise and whatever supplementation you're going to be on, right?
Yeah.
Because like we said, those things invite their own problems. Assuming all of that's true, understand that choosing imbalances is a choice, and they are there no matter what it is. I would like to comment on one thing that I feel like we didn't address. From what we've said, if you're going for health, wellness, and vitality, and like somewhere disembodied gong sounds every time you walk into a room, and there's always a breeze with linen blowing in the background, you know, because you're just so at peace. That still invites its own type of imbalance, you know. When someone's like, "Hey, we're gonna go like have this fun adventure. You want to go?" "Oh no, you know, that's going to interrupt my meditation." Fine, right?
Mhm.
Fine. But when you and those of you who really are devoted to that type of expression in your life, that's fine.
Mhm.
It invites its own type of imbalance.
You know, depending on in that same vein is your friends want to go play a frisbee game or something that you've not played. Sure, you lift some weights here and there, but you haven't really done any type of running. Right. And then as soon as you run
Yeah.
for 5 minutes, you're completely gassed. Yeah, you could probably pick up everybody there on the on the frisbee field or wherever, but you're just completely gassed kind of a thing. And again, it's going back into that how we started, is that equalization, them sound bars of even the most finely tuned, right? We'll be able to hear all the pitches, but we won't hear the extremes.
Yeah.
The same again is just again find that balance. Where is it that you want to be? Where is it that and, you know, even in body mass, right? We see this as people who do like to bulk up or trim down, right? They have a body mass that they like to be at, that they feel comfortable at. Now, whether it's for a competition or some other things of that nature, right? They have to change their weights and fluctuate. But, you know, we all have this kind of area that we feel comfortable or we enjoy ourselves being at. You know, that's that individual choice, and we have to find that place for ourselves and put everything in a line for us to, again, like you said, reach that goal, get to that pinnacle, so to speak.
If the most important thing to you is what's hanging on the wall behind you, right? Like the awards or the achievements or whatever. Great. My wall's blank. So it's yours, John.
That used to be a calendar. It wasn't like something that got stolen from me.
The thing to you is the news that you get when you go to the doctor's office. Then that leads to another kind of lifestyle, right? And everything has a cost, just like everything has a benefit. So the bottom line to it all is be aware of what the cost is, and does that equal the benefit that you want?
Yeah.
Because everything that you decide that you're going to do, you are choosing an imbalance, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And with that,
stay mindful as fuck, y'all.
and don't compensate. Sir John?